Hey everybody, welcome to Commercial Construction Elevate the Industry podcast series hosted by yours truly, Dave Presida. Thanks for joining us today. The purpose of the podcast is to help everyone from owner to intern who is in commercial construction to better understand the industry, understand their place in it, and hopefully provide a path forward to where it is you might want to go. We're going to do that two ways. First, you're going to be hearing from me in solo episodes. Yeah, I've been doing this a long time, 40 years, and I've learned a lot. I've done a lot of good things, and I've done a lot of things I wouldn't do again. Hopefully, you'll be able to learn from that. And the second way we're going to help you is to introduce you to industry leaders. And in my promo, I don't usually go into all of this, but in my promo, I talk about everyone from a business owner to women in business, people who have inspiring stories. And I ended with even people who emigrated to this country, chose commercial construction, and killed it. Now, except for the women in business, our guest today checks all the boxes, and I'm really pleased to have with us a true industry leader, a longtime friend, Vic Verma. Vic is currently on the board of Installed Building Products, who acquired his business, Alpha Insulation and Waterproofing, back in 2017. Vic founded Alpha and probably about 38 years ago, and is, in my mind, probably the most successful entrepreneur in doing what he does. So again, Vic, welcome. It's great to have you as a guest, and I'm excited today.
Well, thanks for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. So let's start out with those who don't know who you are or what Alpha does. Let's talk about Alpha today. What do you do?
Alpha Insulation and Waterproofing, as I just mentioned in the intro, I started in 1982 in San Antonio, Texas. Today, as the name indicates, we do commercial insulation. We also do waterproofing, sealants. We also do fireproofing, spray insulation, including fire stopping. So basically, Alpha Insulation Waterproofing does everything except roofing from Division 7.
And the makeup of your company now, I know you're part of IBP, we'll get to that, but the makeup of your company based here in Atlanta, and where are you?
The head office is Atlanta. We have 17 locations, 4 in Texas, San Antonio, Austin, Houston, Dallas. Naturally, that's where I started, so there are more offices there. 3 in Florida, in Tulsa, Tampa, Miami, and Orlando. And we have Tulsa, Oklahoma, Phoenix, Arizona, Denver, Colorado, Cincinnati, Milwaukee.
You're big.
Charlotte, Raleigh, Nashville, and Atlanta.
So you've obviously
and Baltimore.
Right? You've that recent one. You've obviously established a lot of good relationships over the years, but you were born in India, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And when did you move to the States?
And I was 25 years old. So I did my schooling and my college and 3 years of work in India.
And how did you get into the industry?
Well, that's just pure by accident. My brother wanted me to be here because in India, it's you take care of your mother. And my mom was going to move to US, and she wanted to have both the sons to be at one place. I was in a very good job in India, and I really didn't want to leave. But luck would have it that, I get my visa and I get to San Antonio, Texas. Unfortunately, my industry, where I was involved, was in international marketing. And there was nothing in San Antonio for international marketing. So I struggled for 2-3 months, and then finally a subcontracting firm called Alamo Insulation and Alamo Heating and Air Conditioning offered me a job, not because what I knew, but only because they knew my brother, who happened to be the president of a multifamily construction company. So this was more to make sure that their line of dialogue is open with my brother, that I got this go-first job to get in the business. Well, they hired me for Alamo Heating and Air Conditioning. But luck would have it, the day I joined the company, the manager quit. from the insulation side. Since I didn't know anything about either insulation or heating and air conditioning, they offered me to come and start in the insulation side. And couple of months it took me to figure out that this company is new, insulation side, and they have not made any money. If I can figure it out to make some money, I can make my future better. That's how by mistake I got in the insulation business.
You're an engineer by trade, right?
Yes, I am, but not a civil engineer. And that's another funny thing. In India, if you're growing up, there are only two professions parents want their children to have, either doctor or an engineer. I would pass out if I look at blood. So there was a doctor, being a doctor was out. So and I became an engineer to pacify my mom. But marketing, entrepreneurship was always in me. And once I went to Bombay where I started working, I acquired 2 more degrees, one in international marketing and marketing management, which really helped me in transition into entrepreneurship.
So you had an entrepreneurial spirit. You stumbled and you called yourself a gopher, right? You stumbled into a job. What did management see in you? I mean, yeah, the manager was let go, he left, and you were there. But what did management see in you at such a young age that they put that kind of responsibility on your shoulders?
It's taking ownership of the task. I never blamed it on anybody. All the way from learning to estimate, to selling, to making sure the job gets done, to make sure the accounting gets the billing, and even to follow up with the customer to get paid. I took ownership of all these tasks. And these are tasks any entrepreneur should have to succeed. I didn't consider myself to be an entrepreneur. I was an employee of a company, but I took ownership of everything which was given to me. And that's probably what the management liked.
And that is critical because, as I say, in a podcast that was released on January 7th, questions and answers, concerns about commercial construction. One of the questions I was asked was, how do I move forward in the business? And my answer was, and for you that are listening, it's critical. Be good at what you do. Even if you don't have a master plan, I don't think you started out by saying, I'm going to own, and I'll give you a secret here, the biggest specialty insulation and related products firm in the country. You didn't start out that way. You started out by being good at what you did, and you added value, and one thing led to another. What did that lead to? You being good with that original company. How did you start your own business? How did that happen?
Like I said, my promotions in that company at Alamo were very, very quick. From gopher to a manager the first year, general manager the second year, president the third year, fourth year open another office in Corpus Christi. I traveled every week. Our company had a plane, so I went to Corpus every week and managed both the offices. We had a disagreement with our chairman, and instead of giving you any details, I decided not to be part of that organization, and I was going to go and look for a job. Didn't even know that I want to be in my own business. A friend of mine who was an ex-accountant of the company I worked for called me and said, get in the business yourself. And I told him, I really don't know business. He said, what is your fear? I said, I don't understand accounting, the ledgers, credits and debits. And he said, but that's 5% of the work. You know how to estimate, you know how to sell, you get the job done, you bill the customer, you follow up and collect the money. That's 95% of the business. I'll help you in the other 5%. So the fear of the unknown, which I thought accounting was more than 50% of what a business is, turned out to be a very small amount. And over the years, I learned.
it's a good thing that you got that advice from that person, because think about it. You have a thriving business, you've impacted many, many lives. And if you would have been inhibited by some debits and credits, you might not ever got there. You can hire people to do accounting. You can hire people to do what you don't do, right? But you can't teach people what you know, and you talked about it earlier. You know, you use the word ownership, and I think that that's something that you had and something that you still have today, because you know, people can say what they want, but they own what they do, and you're a good example of that. So you got in business. You decided to start your own business. How did that go?
It was an unbelievable growth. Started in 1982. By 84, I already had started a heating and air conditioning company because an opportunity came. And then started doing the fireproofing. But at that time, if you remember, most of the fireproofing was done by the lath and plaster company. So I decided to get in the lath and plaster business. So before you know it, in 4 years' time, I had Alpha Insulation, Alpha Lath and Plaster, Alpha Spray Systems, Alpha Heating and Air Conditioning. And for a 32-year-old man, 33-year-old man, that was pretty good.
That's good.
But there was also a mistake, because a lot of this work I did on somebody else's talent didn't have enough depth knowledge-wise for myself in different trades, and my ambitiousness kind of got in the way, and I took a big project in heating and air conditioning, a chill water system, something we had never done, biggest project, and didn't go as well. And that's the day I started thinking about, we just need to do what we do best more versus try to be expert in multiple trades.
The biggest challenge that an entrepreneur has, somebody who's really good at what they do, is I was the same thing. I was down here, in all transparency, I was down here a couple of months ago, and we talked about a particular year in our histories, and it was 1992. And it was a difficult year because I kind of did the same thing. You get stretched beyond your core business. Now, we talk about business development, and there's several ways to do it. You can increase your volume by adding on things that make sense to your core, maybe not so different than heating and air conditioning, and you've done that. You've also expanded geographically. So you've taken what you're really good at, you've leveraged the talent that you have and you gained with suppliers and contractors, kind of followed them around, and that's how you've expanded your business. So you have 18 now? 17 divisions? And how many managers?
Typically, each office has 2 managers. One is in charge in sales, marketing, and the other one is on operations. I almost modeled it based on how I built the company, where I was both sales and marketing and in charge of operations. And I found that I was a bigger dreamer than a doer. Before I could finish a task, I was already into the next one. So that's the weakness. I had to find somebody who can strengthen.
Ops guy.
And there came Henry, who ultimately became my partner. He was a young kid, 21 years old when I got him, but he had what it took. And I gave him a partnership, I think, before he turned 26 in the company, because he took care of my weak spot, which was, so I could think, I could dream, I couldn't, and then he can make sure that it gets done. And that's the teamwork is what we implemented in every office, to make sure there is a sales marketing manager and there is an operations manager. Their compensation structure was so much similar, it totally depended on each other. So there is a constant teamwork.
And that is so consistent with, I did a podcast on starting a business. Now, and it could be relevant to what you just said, but too many times people grab talent or people for money, right? You saw Henry as what you weren't really good at. So the two of you were more than just two people, right? When you
Yes.
combine two people and that equals, three, then you've got something. So that's a message to anybody in business, whether you're starting a business, doing a business, right? You know what you know and know what you don't know. And if you're going to fill a gap, fill it with somebody who has what you don't. That's a great lesson. Now, you talked about sales and marketing. You're from India. You have an accent, right? Long time ago, your accent was probably even thicker than it is today. Do you remember your first sales call?
Yeah, it was not a very pleasant experience. You go to see, especially in Texas, these clients, and since my accent was not very good, I tend to speak too fast. Bad accent, speaking too fast. I could see it on their face that they're not getting it. So things I had to learn is to slow down first, and then give them small doses of what I knew. I have to impress them because the first impression, which is how you look, your physical structure, and your language, I was compromised there. But I had what it took here. I knew the solutions to their problems, but how I'm going to let them know. So I'll give them enough solutions, but left some blank so I can follow up either with a second meeting or a letter. There were no emails at that time, and try to let them know that it's not about appearance, how you look, how you talk, it's what you know will make the difference in giving them solutions to their problems. And
That
that's how. But over the years, the confidence got better. My accent improved, and I became more comfortable. So today,
but you
I
know what?
can
Yeah.
I can sell anybody anything.
Action cures fear.
Yeah.
You knew what you wanted, and you weren't afraid to go in, knowing that you had what you call them handicaps, but minor. Again, what you did because you knew what they wanted and you knew how to get them the answers, and the results is that you built trust. Once you build trust, you're there. So, Vic, you were inducted into the Hall of Fame for the National Association of Minority Contractors. Tell us what that means to you.
Again, that's another award. That doesn't mean much, but the organization means a lot to me. I have been on the board of the National Association of Minority Contractors for 6 years. I've been associated with the organization since 1991, so it's been 30 years in the Atlanta chapter. What that organization did was open doors for me. I qualified as a minority contractor, and there are, as you know, several major projects, have a requirement or allocation for a certain minority participation. And before you knew it, Alpha became the company of choice to be the minority contractor in their projects. We trusted in our ability to stay in the door when NAMAC opened the door for us. Uh, so now is my time to give back. We are no longer minority contractors since IBP acquired us, but my commitment to NAMAC is now giving back by mentoring other minority contractors, helping them do joint ventures, and assisting them to become successful.
See, I hope you guys understand what he's saying. You are a true result of what can happen when with the minority requirements across the country. You, because you're minority, utilize it to your advantage. Unlike most that are more like pass throughs and don't really get the end result, you're certainly not that. But as you said, when you were acquired by a public company, you lost your minority status, but you're still involved and you give back. That's awesome. We'll be right back with more from Vic Verma. Hi, I'm Patrick Ripple, founding partner of ISA Architectural.
I've known that chap right there for well over 20 years.
And what a 20 years it's been. I'm Larry Windsor, partner, vice president of construction services. Our third partner, Mike Morehouse, can't be with us today.
We are the Mid-Atlantic's premier sales force for architectural building products and engineered architectural solutions. For over 15 years, we have been providing comprehensive design solutions to architects and designers all across this region, and high-quality economic product solutions to contractors and subcontractors too.
We bring products and people together. We specialize in the building envelope, everything from the weather barrier all the way out to different types of cladding. We fully understand the rain screen principle, and we have an interior portfolio specializing in wood and metal walls and ceilings.
If you're a developer, part of a design team, architect, or interiors, or if you're a contractor, let us help you.
Visit www.isaarchitectural.com and see how we can bring value to your project.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to Commercial Construction Elevate the Industry podcast. We're here with Vic Verma. And when we left off, Vic, we were talking about what made you different. Talk about how you worked with Owens Corning in the early days.
Well, I said, when I got into the insulation industry, really didn't know anything except how to spell insulation. But then I read books, and I almost made myself an expert in sound control and to talk about how much thermal resistance you need to get a certain tonnage on the air conditioning side. And I used to communicate that with our sales person from Owens Corning. And they actually offered me, after 3 to 4 years in business, a position, and Owens Corning's technical advisory board. And I was the youngest person. Most of the people were over 50 at that time, and I was in late 20s. And it was all to do with how much I had learned from the technical side of a very commodity business, which is, architect specifies what R value, you go and buy it from a manufacturer, you install it and bill the customer. The business was very commodity type of business, which I tried to make it more technical. Talking about technical, there was one thing I do want to let you know that since we had a heating and air conditioning company and always talked about thinking outside the box, the person who actually taught me how to estimate insulation was an estimator for heating and air conditioning. So I learned they use the R values to come up with what kind of load will be in a house, what tonnage unit will it take. So I asked him, what happens if you increase the R value? It's the tonnage will go down. And so I started doing experiment from R11 to R13, and then using a sheathing on the outside. What will it do? Or changing the insulation from R19 to R30, and the results were astounding. You can drop the tonnage by 1 ton. Your operating costs will go down. And I used that, again, a technical knowledge which my competition didn't have, to go to my clients and say, here is the reason why you should change the R value. And that's something impressed Owens Corning more than anything else, that I was increasing R values on my own.
They love that.
Yeah.
It makes sense for the home builder, everybody, right? The buyer.
Yeah.
So you mentioned estimating. Now, when you started out, you learned from a guy in the HVAC business. He taught you how to estimate. But as you've grown in the business, and I see this in many companies in all types of subcontracting, they estimate differently. Some centralize it, some do it at each location, and some estimators sell, some don't. You've developed an estimating group, right? You've centralized your estimating.
Yes.
To explain that.
In early 2000s, we were doing fantastic. That is the time, and when things are really good, is the time to best look at what you could do better. What are you learning from the good times? Where the weaknesses are. And I found one weakness as we were growing multiple offices, that the number of estimators you could afford to keep at one office were very limited. 1, 2, maybe 3. One person is sick or cannot make it to the office, will compromise your ability to give bids by 33%, 66%, or 100% if it's a one-man operation. Plus the estimates, when you rush, there is a tendency to make mistakes. So I decided that what can we do to bring the quantitative part of estimating, which is strictly quantity survey done by a third party, whose sole responsibility is that, and put quality controls in play where there will not be any mistakes. And that led to me going to India, bringing 6 senior architects and engineers from there and train them for 6 months here in our environment, strictly do quantity survey. That innovation paid off handsomely. That was 2007. In 2008 and 9, our company grew almost 30 to 40% because our estimators had 3 times more time to interact with clients, to be able to bid more work and keep the quality of the estimate very consistent.
That is music to my ears because I've been in business development my whole life, and when I owned my own company, and I've recently been involved with 2 different companies over the last, say, 8 years that had multiple divisions. And I was preaching that for the reasons you mentioned. You have quality control, you have specialization, I see companies today that put so much on their estimators. Okay, you gotta screen what's coming in, you gotta decide what you're gonna bid, you've got to bid it, and then you've got to sell it. That's a lot, right? When you have a group like you do in India who does, as you call it, quantity surveys, then it comes back to whatever branch. And that branch then takes that quantity survey and says, okay, we have these productions and these costs and so on, because they differ from branch to branch. But now you've standardized all your nomenclature, and you have resources to feed, right, the sales force. That's awesome. And you say it's paid off, and I love it. I couldn't help but notice, and on your website, you said that it says the growth and development of people. The growth and development of people is the highest calling of leadership, by Harvey S. Firestone. That's a quote. How does that relate to your business?
Okay, besides that quote, I also wrote a quote which was by Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan's most famous quote is, trust but verify, something which we have always done. But the quote which touched me was, no limit what a human can accomplish if they're willing to share credit. As the company grew, we just made sure that everybody's opinion was taken into account. We really built the team. That's the only way to share credit. A team wins, a team loses. Individuals may score more points, but a team still loses, you still lost. You might have scored most points, but you still lost. And ultimately in business, success is only gauged by wins and losses. And I wanted to win. The only way you can win is to have a team. The only way you can have a team is to share credits and share losses. And that's what we did. So we had no heroes in our company. Till today, we don't have any heroes. I don't take any credit. Our team won. I just happened to be the captain of the team. So the limelight was on me, but really the team.
So you leave your ego at the door, you know what it is you got to do, and you get it done.
Well, absolutely. There's no other way.
Okay, so you've been doing this a long time. I won't say how long, but probably almost as long as I have. You don't do things yourself. You just talked about how important a team is. But also on the other side is how important are people who influence you, who've influenced you in your life, right? Whether it be, who you are when you were a gopher, right? Somebody was responsible for helping you become who you are and how you think and how you do, how you respect people. Give me a couple of people in your life who've meant something and that's lasted through your entire life.
My biggest inspiration has come from my mother. she is the one who taught me work ethics and the value of education. Those two factors I have carried till today. My dad passed away when I was 4 years old. Really never got to know my dad. And my mother raised six of us. She had a bachelor's degree. She started as a lab technician in a college and retired several years later as head of the department and assistant professor, and had already gotten her master's degree. That's where the work ethics came from. I never saw my mother sleep. She was there when we went to bed at 11:30, 12 after school, after studying, and she woke us up at 5 o'clock to study, and she was still up. So it's the work ethics. It's not giving up attitude. Do whatever it takes attitude came from her. Then the knowledge point of view, that came from my brother. 10 years older than me. Always looked up to him as a father, because when he was going to school, he didn't have books. I mean, you have heard these stories, but he actually studied after 12 when his friends went to sleep because he could borrow their books. He was ranked very high in the country on studies. I could never be that good. I knew that. So I didn't want to fight it. But I will try to be as good in knowledge from point of view. And that's what led for me to learn technical side of the insulation business. It's because I wanted to be just like my brother, who just about knew everything about everything, especially in construction business. But it's just a thirst for knowledge.
So the combination of your mom and brother helped mold you into who you are now. Opportunity comes. I mean, you didn't dream of getting in the insulation business, but you did it because it was there and you saw it. Which brings me to 2017. A big change, right? A big change for Alpha, for you personally. You were acquired by Installed Building Products. It was a huge deal. When you look back at 2017 and then today, give us your thoughts about that whole process, because it had to change things for you personally in particular.
Yeah, it did. It took a long time. I mean, we started the initial dialogue with IBP in 2015, and being a salesman I'm the one who reached out to them after studying a bunch of different companies, but I felt their culture was the closest to our culture. Everybody had been there for a longer time. Team was very close to each other, and that's the reason why I chose, and I made a cold call. And I'll save the details, but it took 16 months of talking and going back and forth to get the deal done by end of 16, which is early 17. Now, change-wise, yes, there was a huge change. Running a business is like a choir, an orchestra. There is one conductor who is the owner, and it got few soloists, so good stars, and then big team to make everything sound in harmony. Come to commercial business, and this publicly traded company, orchestra becomes very, very big. You don't have one conductor. You got 7 conductors, from accounting firms to legal firms to consultants to regulatory staff to STC to the higher hierarchy of the company. It becomes very difficult to manage, to please everybody, and for them to hear your voice. And it took me about a year and a half, but the executive management, the top management of IBP has been very cooperative, and took us about a year to get to understand each other, and it's the best relationship, and I couldn't be happier.
So that's interesting you said it, because the culture, you bring up culture all the time. Does that, so now you are with IBP, you got things moving forward, industry's good, we'll talk about COVID in a second, but you're also in charge of commercial growth, and that includes acquisitions. So you were acquired, right? And now you're in charge of acquiring other companies. What do you look for in a company that that is acquirable? What is attractive about a company that you look for?
I'm going to say a term which is so commonly used, but I'll define why. It's the culture. The culture of the company is extremely important. Is the company believes in single ownership, or is it a shared ownership? Is it shared credit? Just like what Ronald Reagan says. And once I find that, that's to me a perfect match. Most of the companies I look for, I have to go and find out what the bench looks like, what the second string quarterback looks like. Once the sellers lose interest being active part of a business, is there somebody who can step up? And once we find that, because that is not a challenge for me. We have never hired people from our competition. We always hire people who have willingness to work, who have work ethics, who have integrity. Trades, technical stuff we can teach. That's what we have done all our lives. All 32 years, 38 years now, we have taught the skills of what we do. But we just spend more time trying to find the right person. So it's the same concept, find the right team who is willing to do what it takes to be successful.
And I think you're going to be you are good at it, is because you were in that seat a few years ago. You know what transition is like. It's hard.
It's
right?
very hard.
It's hard. But so far, so good. Let's talk about COVID. There's a lot of ways to look at it. Nobody likes it. It's changed our business a little bit. At least we're considered, we're considered, what's the word I'm looking for? Essential. We're considered an essential business. So we haven't slowed down a bit. But things have changed on the job. Things have changed. How has COVID impacted Alpha IBP?
Financially, it has not affected us. On the surface, but there is a lot of intangibles which affects any business. Financial records, you all see, we're a publicly traded company. We declare how we are doing, so that's a public knowledge. But intangibles about teams not being able to be together, problem solving, trying to do it via Zoom or by phone calls. It's very difficult. Emotions are not there. And emotions do play some role in some of the good decision making. You got to feel strong about what needs to be done. That's where I feel that we have taken a step back. But we are not the only one. And we have learned how to live with this. Hopefully things will start opening up soon, and we'll be able to have everybody together under one roof, which will make the difference.
So perception is reality, and the perception of the people that work for Alpha IBP, right, can be all across the board. But you mentioned the word earlier, confidence. I think if nothing else, the COVID-19 has eroded confidence in general. So what would you say to your people, right? What can we learn from this whole thing that makes us stronger in 2021?
And I write a little wisdom mail to our team every month, and actually I mentioned that this year. There were too many greeting cards or calls came in, and they talked about 2020 to be so unfair, so bad, almost to the word hate got used, and that got me thinking as to how should we look at 2020, which is the coronavirus year. And really, to me, it was a bad year. Just like a bad year happens every 3 to 4 years when the construction cycle goes through a little mild or big recession. That is a perfect time to learn. Our company's growth, explosive growth, came after every recession. And you're talking about 20, 30, 40% growth. Because we prepared ourselves, we learned something from the downtime. And I spend more time talking about what should we learn, what have we learned, are we going to be better in 2021 and beyond, and thanks to 2020, which taught us that lesson.
So that's what leadership does, right? You're going to instill confidence for the right reasons. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to do some rapid fire with Vic. Welcome back, everybody, to our interview with Vic Verma. So, Vic, I said before the break, we're going to get into some rapid fire questions, and I'm going to say a word, and I want you to respond in kind with a really brief description, maybe one word. Okay. So let's start with the first word and what this means to you personally in your business. Leadership.
Leadership is listening to people. Leadership is not following conventional wisdom. Now that's a tough question. So what are you saying conventional wisdom? To me, conventional wisdom is average. Conventional wisdom is just around mediocrity. Conventional wisdom is a guideline. If you want to succeed, you have to do better than conventional wisdom. Create your own conventional wisdom, which your team follows or try to do better. That is a moving scale, not a standard. And that's the difference in a leadership, is what I believe in.
Relationship.
Relationship means just about everything to me. I mean, all the stories I have given you, without relationship, you cannot have a good team, you cannot have good clients. Basically,
so everything.
Everything, yeah.
Staff.
Family.
Suppliers.
It's going to be funny, but bank, financing.
That's not what I expected. Why would you say that?
I had limited resources, but I still have the plan to grow the company. And the best suppliers, once they know that you're on their side, you're going to pay the bills on agreed upon terms, they listen a little bit more. And in order for us to grow, I could not get the bank financing. I went to the suppliers, I got extended terms from them. And thanks to them, our company grew without outside financing.
So I'm going to plug, shameless plug here. On January 14th, podcast number 12 was released. When I talk about business development and creative financing, that is one of the key factors, working with your suppliers to create cash. Awesome. How about this? Customers.
Friends.
Risk.
Reward.
Oh, that's awesome. Growth.
Success.
Last but not least, and this is you, thinking about you, and the word is influence.
Influence from everybody who comes in your life. You have something to learn from them. Influence to me is looking at the good in everybody. Ignore what doesn't meet your standards, but there is something to learn from every individual who comes in your life.
That's a great segue to this question. It's a deep one, but you talk about all these things you just mentioned: family, influence, leadership. You're a long way from being done. We know that. But if you had to look ahead and if you were asked this question several years from now, how would you want to be remembered? How would you answer that?
Problem solver. Listener. Helper.
And that's about enough. And I'll tell you why. You notice he didn't say anything about business owner, right? Whatever. I won't go there. But all of those things that people think are important. at the end of the day, that's what's important to you. And I can't tell you, I admire that in a big way. We can't finish this interview without asking you questions about some of your prominent projects. What are some of the most prominent projects that, if you were to describe this to a group, what would you say? What would they be?
There are two ways to look at prominent projects. I have prominent projects for my ego. And I can tell you that we did airports in Atlanta and Dallas and San Antonio and Austin and Denver Airport and Charlotte Airport. We did convention centers in all these cities. We have done Dallas Cowboys Stadium and Braves Stadium, Falcon Stadium, Orlando Magic and American Airlines Arena. And those are all for ego. I'd rather talk about jobs which kicked me on my ass and made me learn something from them. And one of the big projects was the JCPenney World Headquarters in Texas, close to Dallas. And it was the biggest fireproofing job I had ever taken. What a major error we made. We had the expertise to do the work. We didn't take into account logistics of how machines to be placed. And a job which was figured at 3 machines took almost 8 to 9 machines. Just the financing on those expensive machines and the number of people to operate those was a lesson we learned, that we look into every job differently. It's the same number of they were like, I'm trying to remember, 100,000 bags project, I think it was. We had done other 100,000 bag jobs,
Spray fireproof.
but they were vertical, going straight up, floor
Right.
after floor after floor, versus a JCPenney campus,
Sprawling.
which is sprawling, spread out, and you were required to work in 2 different corners of the building, which may be almost half a mile apart, was a challenge. That was a tough project I learned from. And the other tough project which actually made this company out what it is today is a job called DeKalb Jail in Atlanta. We were the mechanical insulation, something I had no idea what to do, but I have somebody in our company who said they knew how to do this. And this was in 1992 when things were really, really bad. We took a job at $450,000. Our out-of-pocket cost was $1.4 million.
Mm.
They actually should have a wing on the DeKalb jail. Could be called.
You contributed $1 million.
$1 million to that jail. But that's the day I decided that I don't want to be in so many different trades. Just want to be the best in one.
Right.
That was 1992. And from 1993, we have not looked back. We just became better insulation contractor, better fireproofer, better waterproofer, and enjoyed a double-digit growth till 2009 or 10, 17 years in a row. And the other recession hit the commercial side.
That's amazing. But, for those that are watching and listening, you have emotional intelligence. There's no question about it. I think that's in my list of priorities for people I look for, and what you look for in successful people, it is that you can learn pretty much everything else, but you have emotional intelligence. Now, you just demonstrated that again, because I asked you a question about prominent projects, and you put them in 2 categories. 1, ego, where it probably made a lot of money, and 2, where you learned the most. And that's huge, because sometimes people don't remember the bad stuff, but you take, like you said about COVID, you take the difficult challenges and you twist it around and you figure out how to use it to make yourself better. Success means a lot of different things to different people. How would you define success?
Success to me is being able to communicate at a friend level with your team members, with your suppliers, and with your customers. And if you can do that, success is there. I never got in this business to make money. I wanted to provide a good living for the family. But success meant everything. I wanted to be successful in what I do. Money is just a byproduct. How much money is still a byproduct? I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. But success. Don't get in a business just with the sole idea of making money. Being successful, make small targets, smaller goals, short-term goals, not long-term goals. I'm not a long-term guy at all. I have no clue what's going to be happening in 23, 24. I have an idea, but no, and I don't want to think beyond 12 months.
So for someone new getting into business, or really anybody in the business that wants to move forward, what would your general advice be? Could be an estimator, could be a project manager, could be a business owner.
Anybody who wants to be in their own business must understand that it takes several skills, several hats you have to wear to be successful. Find when you cannot wear all those hats. Find somebody who you can share the hat with. That's when the entrepreneurs succeed. To find somebody who can do the ops, find somebody who can do the marketing, find somebody who can do the operations, find somebody who can make sure that the accounting is kept. And these are the different hats an entrepreneur has to wear. If you want to be truly successful, think about what you don't have more than what you have, and find a talent to take care of your weakness. And that's number one. Number two is just be the best in what you do. Just be the best in what you do.
So I challenge anybody who's listening to this, whether you're an intern, whether you want to become an owner in business, whether you're an assistant project manager who wants to move ahead and be the guy, whether you want to become the third level estimator to the chief estimator, you're looking at a guy now who came here from India and developed, and I'm going to say this, in all transparency, he's developed the biggest and best commercial insulation, subcontracting and related products specialty business in the country. Now, there's no question about that. I'm saying that you're not. But it started because of what you just said. Be the best that you can be, and the rest will take care of itself. So Vic, in all sincerity, thank you so much for being part of this today, being part of the podcast. I said earlier that the podcast is supposed to empower people by listening to stories from people like you. You've certainly laid it on the table. Again, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share my story, and I hope that if it can change and alter a small portion of somebody's life, mission accomplished.
Perfect. And thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Stay safe and stay tuned. All the music for the episodes, including our theme song Elevate, was provided by DMV producer Trey Skills. If you like what you heard, follow Trey Skills on Instagram at Trey Skills, TreySkillz. That's TreySkillz. So follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Elevate Industry. Check out my YouTube channel at Commercial Construction, Elevate the Industry. Visit my website, adicorp.com, ADICORP.com. Go to LinkedIn, search for David Procida, hit connect, and follow me. Please rate, review, and comment on this episode, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Elevate. Elevate. Elevate.